The year is 2029. A spacecraft lands on Mars carrying 4 people. They step onto red ground. They breathe reused air. They look up at a pale blue dot in the strange sky, and they understand a terrible truth. They are never going home. Not because they changed their minds, not because something failed, but because the laws of the universe make returning impossible. This is the story no one wants to tell you about colonizing Mars. But before we begin, do not forget to subscribe. And if you really enjoy these videos, please leave a like. Let us begin. What you are about to hear is not science fiction. It is not a far-off idea. It is not a story about what might happen in some distant century. This is the reality facing anyone who steps onto a spacecraft headed for Mars in our lifetime. The radiation that will change their DNA. The gravity that will weaken their bones. The distance that makes rescue impossible. The fuel that cannot bring them home. And the mental pain of knowing they will never see Earth again except as a pale blue dot fading into the darkness. We will explore the truth that no space agency wants as a headline. We will examine why even the most hopeful engineers admit the return trip may never happen. We will meet the volunteers who signed up anyway, and we will face the question that troubles every Mars mission planner on Earth. Is colonizing another world worth the permanent exile of everyone who goes? This is the story of why anyone who goes to Mars will never come back. Chapter 1, The Point of No Return. The year is 2026. A spacecraft sits on the launch pad at Boca Chica, Texas. Inside are 4 human beings. They have trained for years. They have said goodbye to everyone they love. They have signed papers admitting that their mission carries what the documents call acceptable risk. But acceptable is a word that changes under pressure. And the pressure waiting for them is unlike anything any human has ever faced. The distance from Earth to Mars changes greatly depending on where both planets are in their paths around the Sun. At the closest point, about 55 million km. At the farthest, almost 400 million km. The average is somewhere around 225 million km. These numbers are so large they lose meaning. So let us turn them into something easier to understand. Time. When you send a radio signal from Earth to Mars, it travels at the speed of light. Nothing in the universe moves faster. And yet, even at that extreme speed, the signal takes between 4 and 24 minutes to arrive, depending on where the planets are. This means that when an astronaut on Mars says hello to mission control, the earliest they can hear a reply is 8 minutes later. More often, it is closer to 40 minutes for a round-trip exchange, sometimes longer. Now imagine an emergency. A seal breaks. Air begins leaking into the Martian emptiness. The astronaut has seconds to act. They call Earth. The signal rushes outward at 186,000 miles per second. It reaches mission control 14 minutes later. Engineers hurry. They create a response. They send it back. Another 14 minutes pass. By the time their instructions reach Mars, 28 minutes have gone by. The astronaut is already dead or saved by their own actions. Earth cannot help. Earth can only watch. And often Earth cannot even watch in real time. They learn about emergencies minutes after those emergencies have already ended one way or another. This communication delay is not a technical problem waiting to be fixed. It is physics. It is the basic structure of the universe. No amount of engineering skill can make light move faster. No new communication technology can shrink the space between worlds. The delay is permanent. It is absolute. It means that anyone on Mars lives in a kind of time separation from the rest of humanity. They exist in a bubble where help is always too far away, where advice arrives too late, where the rest of humanity can only watch their struggles like people watching a tragedy on a screen with no power to help. This is the first reason why Mars colonists face a journey unlike any in human history. Not because the technology is new, not because the destination is strange, but because the basic safety net that has protected every explorer since the beginning of human travel simply does not exist. When Shackleton was trapped in Antarctic ice, he could wait for rescue. When Apollo 13 suffered a terrible failure, the crew could depend on real-time guidance from Houston. When sailors face storms, they can radio for Coast Guard help. Mars offers none of this. Mars offers only silence and distance and the cold math of light-speed delay. But the communication problem is only the start. It is the first domino in a chain of impossibilities that pile up against the return trip. Think about launch windows. Earth and Mars do not stay still in space. Both planets move around the Sun at different speeds and distances. Mars takes about 687 Earth days to complete one orbit. Earth takes 365. This means the two planets are always changing position compared to each other. Sometimes they move closer, sometimes farther apart. The alignment that allows efficient travel between them happens only once every 26 months or so. Miss that window, and you must wait more than 2 years for the next chance. This has huge effects on any return trip. An astronaut cannot simply decide to go home when they feel scared, tired, or sick. They must wait for orbital motion to line up. They must make sure their spacecraft has enough fuel and still works for the trip. They must accept that the window may close before they are ready, leaving them stranded for another 26 months with whatever supplies they have. During the Apollo missions, the moon was only 3 days away. Astronauts could turn around and return home within a week if needed. Mars missions work on a completely different scale. The trip itself takes 6 to 9 months, depending on the path and engine technology. Add the required wait for a return window and missions last for years. The shortest possible round trip takes about 3 years. Many mission plans stretch to 5 years or more. 3 years. 5 years. These are not camping trips. These are not long work assignments. These are lengths of time in which governments change and technology moves forward and relationships change, and the world an astronaut left becomes unfamiliar. These are periods when the human body suffers serious damage in the strange environment of space and Mars. Damage that may make the return trip physically impossible, even if everything else goes perfectly. The most hopeful schedule suggested by SpaceX points to first uncrewed Starship missions to Mars by 2026. If those landings work, then crewed missions could follow in 2028 or 2029. Elon Musk himself has said these dates are very uncertain. He has described the chances of meeting the 2026 goal as 50-50. Every earlier timeline he announced has slipped by years. In 2016, the target for humans on Mars was 2024. By 2020, it became 2026. Now it sits at 2029 with many conditions attached. This pattern of delay does not show failure. It shows how incredibly hard the problem is. It shows that even the most ambitious and well-funded private space company in history is humbled by the reality of interplanetary travel. And these timelines assume one-way trips. They assume astronauts who reach Mars and stay there forever. The moment you add the need to bring those astronauts safely back to Earth, the difficulty grows enormously. The amount of fuel needed, the reliability of systems that must work for years in the harshest environment humans know, the physical health of astronauts who have spent years exposed to radiation and low gravity. Each problem makes the others worse. NASA officially says return missions are the goal. Their reference plans for Mars exploration include bringing astronauts home, but read the technical studies closely and a different picture appears. Research by NASA scientists has calculated that radiation exposure during a Mars round trip would go beyond NASA's own career limits for astronauts. Papers in scientific journals describe average estimates for radiation-caused death risk that could exceed 5%, with upper limits near 10%. These are not small dangers. These are not acceptable losses in any normal sense. These are risks that would permanently ground any airplane. The question of return is not just about desire or money or effort. It is about physics and biology and the hard math of survival. Can we build spacecraft that can work for 5 years in deep space and on another planet? Can we make fuel on Mars using resources we have never successfully used on a large scale? Can we protect human bodies from radiation damage that grows month after month? Can we reverse the bone loss and muscle weakness that start the moment an astronaut leaves Earth's gravity? The honest answer from scientists is that we do not know. We hope, we calculate, we run models, we perform test missions in Antarctica and underwater labs and desert stations. But no human has ever spent 3 years in deep space. No human has ever lived in Martian gravity. No human has ever tried to launch themselves from another planet. Everything about a Mars return mission exists as an untested guess. And guesses have a dangerous history in spaceflight. The guess that shuttle heat tiles were strong enough. The guess that O-ring seals would work in cold weather. The guess that Apollo 1's pure oxygen cabin was a manageable fire risk. Spaceflight punishes wrong guesses with death. One of the most serious examples comes from the Mars 1 project. This was a Dutch nonprofit started in 2011 with the clear goal of creating a permanent human settlement on Mars. Their key idea was also their most debated choice. They removed the return trip from the plan entirely. They admitted that bringing people back was beyond current technology and money. They chose to send people on one-way trips. Mars One attracted over 200,000 applicants from around the world. People who knew they would never return. People who accepted permanent exile as the cost of being among the first humans on another world. The project eventually failed. It declared bankruptcy in 2019 without launching a mission. But it succeeded in showing something important about human nature. Given the choice between staying on Earth forever and going to Mars knowing they could never return, hundreds of thousands chose Mars. That willingness exists because people understand something that mission planners sometimes hide behind hopeful language. The return trip is not a small detail to solve later. It is not a side issue after reaching Mars. The return trip is the hardest part, and it may be impossible with any technology we can realistically build in the lifetimes of anyone reading this. This is the point of no return, not a place, not a moment in flight. The point of no return is the choice to go. Once that spacecraft leaves Earth with humans inside, those humans have accepted a future that almost certainly does not include coming home. They may hope for rescue. They may dream of new inventions. They may tell their families they will see them again someday, but physics does not care about hope. Distance does not change for dreams. The space between Earth and Mars stays exactly the same. This is not pessimism. This is not giving up. This is reality that anyone thinking about a Mars mission must face honestly. The first people on Mars will not be explorers who plant a flag and return as heroes. They will be settlers. They will be exiles. They will be humans who give up everything familiar for the chance to stand on red ground under a strange sky. And they will never come back. The question is whether anyone should go at all. The question is whether the dream of becoming a multi-planet species is worth the cost of permanent separation from everyone and everything those first settlers have ever known. The question echoes through every part of this investigation. In the next chapter, we will look at how far Mars really is. Not just in kilometers, not just in minutes of light delay, but in the felt distance that changes astronauts into something very different from the people they were when they left Earth. The tyranny of distance waits. Chapter 2. The tyranny of distance. In 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on another world, the Moon. They traveled about 384,000 km from Earth. The trip took 3 days. When Armstrong spoke his famous words about one small step, the signal reached Earth in 1.3 seconds. Mission Control could watch and respond almost in real time. If something went wrong, the astronauts could turn back and be home within days. Now think about Mars. At its closest point to Earth, Mars is about 55 million km away. That is 143 times farther than the Moon. At its farthest, nearly 400 million km separate the two planets, more than 1,000 times the Earth-Moon distance. These numbers go beyond human understanding. They describe a level of emptiness that has no match in life on Earth. The Apollo astronauts could look back and see Earth filling much of the sky, blue and white and alive. A sign that safety waited only days away. Astronauts on Mars will see Earth as a tiny point of light in the early morning or evening sky. Smaller than Venus looks to us. A pale dot holding everyone they have ever known. Everyone they will never see again. Every meal they remember. Every street they walked. Every person who ever loved them. All squeezed into a speck barely different from nearby stars. The mental weight of this distance cannot be fully trained for. Astronauts practice in isolation rooms. They spend months in test habitats. They go through mental exams meant to find people with the emotional strength for extreme situations. But no test can copy the moment when an astronaut looks up from the Martian ground and realizes that the tiny blue light in the sky is all of human civilization. That everyone who ever lived and died did so on that faraway point. That the astronaut has placed themselves farther from humanity than any human ever has. Scientists call this the overview effect in reverse. The normal overview effect describes how astronauts' thinking changes when they see Earth from orbit. They feel global unity. Borders seem meaningless. They feel seeing life surrounded by darkness. Astronauts report deep and lasting changes. They come back to Earth changed by what they saw. The Mars experience flips this effect. Instead of seeing Earth whole and beautiful, astronauts see it small. Instead of feeling connected to humanity, they feel cut off from it. Instead of wonder, they may feel deep loneliness. No training can fully prepare the human mind for being more alone than any human ever has been. separated not only by distance, but by time, by communication delays that stop real conversation, by launch windows that make rescue unlikely, by the basic physics of a universe not made for human comfort. This isolation has clear mental effects even in Earth tests. The Mars 500 experiment from 2010 to 2011 locked 6 volunteers in a small habitat for 520 days to copy a Mars round trip. Scientists watched their mental health the whole time. They saw big changes in sleep. Signs of depression increased. Crew members became quieter. Messages to fake mission control dropped in number and emotion. And this happened even though they knew they were on Earth. That help was just outside the door, that their isolation was chosen and temporary. Real Mars settlers will face much harder conditions. Their isolation will be real. Their confinement will be permanent. The knowledge that no rescue is coming will sit in their minds every moment of every day. Studies of Antarctic winter crews show more clues. These researchers spend months in darkness with little communication. They develop what experts call psychological winter-over syndrome. Irritability, slowed thinking, depression, conflict between people, and Antarctica offers air you can breathe, ground you can walk on without a spacesuit, and the theoretical possibility of emergency evacuation. Mars offers none of these comforts. The distance to Mars also creates what mission planners call the autonomy problem. Astronauts cannot wait for instructions from Earth. Decisions must be made locally. Emergencies must be handled with whatever knowledge and resources exist on site. This requires a fundamental change in how space missions operate. For 60 years, human spaceflight has relied on the ground control model. Engineers on Earth monitor every system. They analyze data streams. They detect problems before crews notice them. They develop solutions to problems while astronauts focus on other tasks. The relationship between crew and ground is like the relationship between pilots and air traffic controllers. Working together in real time, sharing responsibility for safety. Multiple layers of oversight to catch errors. Mars missions cannot work this way. The communication delay destroys real-time cooperation. By the time ground controllers see a problem, by the time they develop a solution, by the time their instructions reach Mars, the situation has already fixed itself or become worse beyond repair. Astronauts must become completely self-sufficient. They must diagnose their own problems, fix their own equipment, make their own medical decisions, handle their own emergencies without guidance. This need for independence collides with another reality. Mars crews will be small. The limits of interplanetary travel restrict how many humans can make the journey. Current plans imagine early crews of 4 to 12 people. Compare this to the International Space Station, where crews of 6 rotate often and ground support includes thousands of engineers and specialists. A Mars colony cannot afford this kind of backup. A Mars colony must operate with a small group of people who somehow together have all the skills needed to survive forever on an alien world. What happens when the colony's only doctor gets sick? What happens when their only systems engineer has a mental breakdown? What happens when conflict between people splits the crew into groups that refuse to work together? These situations may sound dramatic, but they reflect real events seen in every extreme environment humans have tried to live in. Antarctic expeditions, submarine patrols, space station missions. Conflict appears, people break down, systems fail, and on Earth there are always choices. Evacuation, resupply, reinforcements, replacement people. Mars offers permanent commitment to whoever is there, for better or worse, in sickness and health, until death separates them from their only companions. The journey itself adds another layer to the distance problem. Current propulsion technology requires 6 to 9 months to reach Mars from Earth. Future nuclear propulsion might cut this to 3 or 4 months, but even the most hopeful ideas still involve weeks or months in deep space with no way to turn back. During Apollo missions, astronauts could turn around and come home during most of their trip. The point of no return came relatively late in the mission plan. For Mars, the physics are different. Once a spacecraft commits to the Mars path, returning to Earth needs more fuel than continuing to Mars. The gravitational math makes turning back more expensive as the trip continues. Within weeks of leaving, astronauts become committed. Going back becomes harder than going forward. This means that problems found during the journey cannot lead to evacuation. If a crew member gets appendicitis 3 months into the trip, they cannot return to Earth hospitals. If equipment fails in ways that threaten life support, the crew cannot abort to safety. If mental collapse affects one or more crew members, there is no option to isolate or replace them. Whatever happens during those months of travel, the crew must deal with it using the resources on their spacecraft. And those resources are limited, carefully planned, optimized for expected situations. The unexpected gets whatever safety margin remains, and in spaceflight, the unexpected always arrives. The Challenger disaster killed 7 astronauts 73 seconds after launch. Columbia killed 7 more during re-entry. Apollo 1 killed 3 during a ground test. Apollo 13 nearly killed 3 more when an oxygen tank exploded halfway to the moon. Spaceflight punishes carelessness. Spaceflight finds weak points. Spaceflight uses every gap between what engineers expected and what actually happens. A Mars journey multiplies these dangers across months instead of days. Every system must work perfectly for much longer than any earlier mission required. Every seal must hold. Every circuit must work. Every backup must stay available if needed. The chance of parts failing increases with time. The chance of chain failures increases with mission complexity. The chance of human mistakes increases with tiredness, stress, and confinement. And if something goes wrong, there is no rescue. There is no Coast Guard for the space between planets. There is no abort that brings the crew back to safety. There is only the distance. 55 million km at best, 390 million at worst. Empty space that does not care about human tragedy. Radio signals carrying distress calls toward an Earth that cannot answer in time. The tyranny of distance showing itself with cold mathematical indifference. This tyranny shapes every part of Mars mission planning. It decides what supplies must go with the crew. It decides what skills crew members must have. It decides what medical conditions disqualify candidates. It decides what psychological traits suggest strength or weakness. Every choice passes through the same limit. Help is not coming. Whatever can go wrong must be survivable with local resources. Whatever cannot be survived locally will kill everyone who experiences it. The distance also changes the meaning of personal relationships. Astronauts on the International Space Station orbit about 400 km above Earth's surface. They can video call their families with little delay. They can see their homes from the windows. They can keep real connections during months apart. They know the separation is temporary. They know they will return. They know their absence is counted in days, moving steadily toward reunion. Mars settlers lose all of these comforts. Their families exist at least 4 light minutes away. Conversations turn into recorded messages. The natural flow of conversation disappears. Questions must wait at least 8 minutes for answers, more often 20 to 40 minutes. The spontaneity that makes relationships feel alive is replaced by a letter-like system. Messages across the void, sent and received, but never truly interactive. How does a parent watch their child grow from 40 minutes away? How does a spouse keep closeness through exchanges that feel more like voicemail than conversation? How do friendships survive when every interaction requires waiting and planning, and the certain knowledge that by the time you hear the reply, the moment has already passed? Studies of military families separated by deployment show serious strain on relationships even with modern communication tools. Divorce rates rise. Depression symptoms appear in both deployed people and partners at home. Children struggle with absent parents. Separation measured in months and thousands of kilometers causes clear psychological costs. Mars separation is far greater than military deployment. Mars separation is permanent. Mars separation is millions of kilometers. Mars separation includes communication delays that make normal conversation impossible. Mars separation means watching your children grow through recorded videos that arrive after the moment they show has already passed. Every astronaut who boards a spacecraft heading to Mars makes this sacrifice. They choose emptiness over connection. They choose distance over closeness. They choose the red horizon of an alien world over every sunrise they could have seen on Earth. They choose knowing they will die without ever again touching the people they love. This is the tyranny of distance. Not just physical separation, not just communication delays. The tyranny lives in the change of every relationship into something distant, delayed, and finally insufficient. The tyranny lives in the certain knowledge that every goodbye before launch was the last true goodbye, that everything after is correspondence, that the astronaut has traded their place in the human web of connection for a home so far away that connection turns into memory, turns into grief, turns into acceptance. Some will say technology can reduce this burden. Virtual reality, touch feedback AI companions designed to simulate presence. But simulation is not presence. A representation is not contact. No matter how advanced the interface, it cannot change the basic truth that the person you love lives on a different world. That they are aging and changing and living a life you cannot share. That they might die while you watch a recording of their living face from days earlier. The first people on Mars will be the loneliest humans who have ever lived. Not because they lack people around them, not because they cannot communicate with Earth, but because the quality of their connection to everything they left behind will be permanently reduced. They will remember being part of humanity. They will remember having family. They will remember how it felt to exist in the same moment of time as the people they loved. And they will know those moments are gone forever. The distance creates another problem that gets less attention, but may be just as destructive. The cultural distance. Humans are social beings who find meaning through shared experiences. Jokes that work only because everyone knows the reference. News events that shape shared understanding. Music and art and language that grow together. The feel of everyday life that holds a society together. Mars settlers will watch Earth culture continue without them. They will receive news of events they cannot affect and barely understand because they lack the lived experience that gives news meaning. They will hear about political changes in places they no longer live. They will see fashion, technology, and social movements appear and wonder how strange their home world has become, while Earth slowly forgets them. The early excitement will fade. Media coverage will shrink. The settlers will become rare curiosities, living history figures who slowly turn into abstractions, while they still breathe and work on their distant world. In the next chapter, we will explore what happens to human bodies during and after the trip to Mars. Bones that weaken, muscles that shrink, changes that may make return physically impossible even if every other barrier vanished. A body that turns against you waits. Chapter 3. A body that turns against you. The human body is an amazing machine. Billions of years of evolution shaped it to survive on Earth. For walking upright under gravity, for pumping blood from heart to brain against constant downward pull, for building bones strong enough to hold our weight for decades, for keeping muscles able to move against resistance. Every system in the human body depends on one critical constant, the 1G gravity of our home planet. Remove that gravity and the body begins to break itself down. This is not a guess. This is proven medical fact seen in every astronaut who has spent long periods in space. The damage starts within days of reaching orbit. It speeds up with time. And despite many years of study and countermeasures, it has never been fully stopped. Consider bone loss. On Earth, the stress of standing and walking tells bone cells to keep bones strong. Remove that stress and the signal disappears. Bone-building cells slow down while bone-removing cells keep working at normal speed. The result is loss. About 1 to 2% of bone mass per month in microgravity. This is faster than bone loss in postmenopausal women. It is faster than bone loss from bed rest. It shows the body adapting to a place where dense bones are no longer useful. The math becomes frightening over Mars mission timeframes. A 6-month trip to Mars causes 6 to 12% bone loss. A 500-day stay on the surface adds more risk, even with Mars's weaker gravity. Another 6 to 9 months on the return trip continues the damage. By the time a Mars astronaut comes back to Earth, they may have lost 20 to 30% of their bone mass in weight-bearing areas like the spine and hips. This loss is not just numbers. It appears as higher risk of broken bones. Astronauts returning from long missions have had sudden spinal fractures during normal activities. The bones that once supported them on Earth can no longer handle Earth's gravity. They need months or years of recovery. Some never fully regain what they lost. What happens to someone who spends years in low gravity and then tries to return to Earth? Evidence suggests their skeleton may no longer be able to support them. They would need major medical care right after landing. They would need long rehabilitation under careful supervision. They might break bones doing something as simple as standing. And this assumes they survive re-entry forces, which themselves place huge stress on the body. Mars's gravity well brings its own problems. Surface gravity on Mars is about 38% of Earth's. This is not zero gravity. Weight-bearing movement is still possible. But scientists do not know if 0.38 g is enough to keep bones healthy over years or decades. The honest answer is no human has ever lived in this condition. We have data from zero gravity. We have data from Earth gravity. The space between is unknown. Lab studies that copy partial gravity suggest that forces below 0.4 g may not be enough to stop muscle and bone loss. If this is true, Martian settlers would keep losing bone mass even while living on the planet. They would arrive weakened from travel. They would keep weakening during their stay. By the time a return chance appeared, their skeletons might be unable to handle Earth gravity. Not because of bad engineering or lack of effort, but because of the slow biological truth of a body adapting to a world where strong bones are no longer needed. Muscle loss creates a similar problem. Without gravity's constant resistance, muscles begin to shrink. Studies show up to 20% loss of muscle mass in 1 month of spaceflight, up to 30% loss of muscle strength in the same time. The body saves energy by removing tissue it thinks is unnecessary. Why keep large leg muscles when legs no longer push against resistance? Why keep a powerful heart when pumping blood is easy in weightlessness? Astronauts on the International Space Station exercise 2 hours every day to fight this damage. They use special machines that create resistance. Treadmills with harnesses that pull them down, bikes that stress the heart and lungs, weight machines that make artificial loads. This routine helps but does not fix the problem. Astronauts still come back weaker. They still need rehabilitation. They still feel the gap between the body they remember and the body they now have. Mars settlers will face limits on exercise equipment that ISS astronauts do not. Weight is extremely valuable on interplanetary missions. Every kilogram of exercise gear replaces a kilogram of food, water, or spare parts. Mission planners must balance body health against other survival needs. The result may leave settlers without enough tools to stay fully fit. And even if perfect exercise machines existed and settlers used them perfectly, the main question remains: can 2 hours of exercise undo 22 hours of low gravity? Evidence suggests the answer is no. Exercise reduces damage but does not stop it. It slows decline without ending it. Over enough time, even the most dedicated exerciser will change physically. The heart and blood system face their own problems. On Earth, the heart constantly works against gravity to move blood up to the brain. This work keeps the heart strong. In weightlessness, blood shifts toward the head. The heart faces less resistance. It begins to weaken like any muscle that is not used. The heart pumps less blood. The systems that keep blood pressure stable when you stand up stop working well. When astronauts return to Earth, they often feel orthostatic intolerance, which means they cannot stand up without feeling dizzy or fainting. Their heart and blood system have forgotten how to work against gravity. Blood pools in the legs instead of flowing to the brain. Vision darkens, awareness fades. Some astronauts collapse completely. This problem usually goes away within days or weeks after returning to Earth. But it shows how strongly the body changes when gravity is missing. A Mars colonist returning after years in weaker gravity would face severe problems standing up. Their heart would have adapted to only 0.38 g at most. Returning to 1 g would mean a 260% increase in gravity load. Their heart and blood system would be extremely unprepared. Even if their bones survived the change, their circulation system might fail. Vision changes are another danger of spaceflight that directly affects Mars missions. About 2/3 of astronauts on long missions experience some level of vision problems. A condition called spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome causes swelling of the optic nerve and flattening of the eyeball. The exact cause is not fully known, but it appears to be related to fluids moving toward the head in microgravity. Some astronauts have had permanent vision changes. Their eyes never fully return to how they were before flight. This happens after missions lasting only months. What happens after missions lasting years? What happens when fluid shifts change between microgravity during travel and partial gravity on the surface of Mars? Scientists do not know. The experiment has never been done. The first long-term Mars colonists will provide the answers. The spine is especially vulnerable. In microgravity, the discs between the vertebrae expand because pressure disappears. Astronauts often report growing 1 to 2 inches taller during spaceflight. This sounds harmless, but the expansion stretches support tissues. Back pain is common when astronauts return. Herniated discs happen more often. The spine that worked perfectly on Earth becomes a source of long-term pain after long time in space. Research from the University of California, San Francisco, found that the cause of back pain after spaceflight was not swollen discs, as first thought. Instead, the pain came from weakening of the multifidus muscles, small muscles that connect and support the spine bones. These muscles shrink in weightlessness because they no longer need to stabilize the spine. When gravity returns, they cannot support it properly. Pain and injury follow. Now combine all these problems: bone loss, muscle weakness, heart and blood system decline, vision damage, spine changes. Each one is a different body system failing to stay healthy in strange conditions. Together, they cause a chain reaction that turns astronauts into physically different people than they were when they left Earth. The International Space Station gives us our best data so far. Astronauts usually stay for 6 months. Some have stayed up to a year. Scott Kelly's famous one-year space mission showed that longer stays cause stronger effects. His telomeres grew longer and then shorter after return. His gene activity changed in measurable ways. His identical twin brother stayed on Earth as a comparison, showing how deeply space changes human biology. A round trip to Mars would expose astronauts to these conditions for at least 3 years. 3 years of radiation, 3 years of changed gravity, 3 years of tight isolation. The body changes seen in 6-month missions would have 36 months to grow worse. And unlike ISS astronauts, Mars colonists could not return quickly if their health declined. They would be stuck on their mission no matter what happened to their bodies. This creates a harsh paradox. The longer someone stays on Mars, the less able they become to survive the trip back to Earth. The body adapts to Mars conditions, which makes it less able to handily function on Earth. Bones adjusted for 0.38 G cannot suddenly support 1 G. Muscles trained for less effort cannot suddenly produce full strength. Heart and blood systems set for easy circulation cannot suddenly handle gravity's constant pull. The astronaut who lands on Mars as a strong, highly trained human slowly becomes a Martian. Not in a symbolic way, but physically. Their body reshapes itself for its new home. This change is not reversible by choice. It is not reversible by exercise. It may not be fully reversible at all. Some countermeasures exist, and more are being studied. Artificial gravity using rotating spacecraft could keep conditions closer to Earth during travel. But these systems add huge weight and complexity to missions. They introduce new ways things can fail that simpler designs do not have. No rotating artificial gravity spacecraft has ever been built or tested with people inside. The technology is still only a theory. Medicines show promise for certain problems. Bisphosphonates can slow bone loss. Strength training can reduce muscle weakness. Fluid loading can help with standing tolerance. But these are partial fixes to a large problem. They buy time without solving the real cause. Human bodies evolved for Earth. Human bodies want to live on Earth. Forcing them to live elsewhere needs constant help that delays, but does not stop, decline. Some scientists have suggested choosing astronauts based on traits that might make them more resistant to space effects. Genetic traits that protect bone strength, heart systems that adjust well, vision that resists fluid shifts. This idea raises ethical concerns, but may become necessary for long missions. Not everyone may be biologically suited for life on Mars. The number of possible settlers may be smaller than hopeful estimates suggest. There is also the issue of medical care on Mars. Earth hospitals can fix broken bones with precise surgery. They can treat heart emergencies with advanced equipment and expert doctors. They can treat eye problems with eye specialists. Mars will have none of this at first. Only limited medical supplies and a crew trained in basic care without deep expertise. No way to evacuate to better hospitals. An astronaut who breaks a hip on Mars cannot be flown to a trauma center. An astronaut with heart arrhythmia cannot receive the advanced heart treatment available on Earth. An astronaut losing vision cannot see the specialists who might save their sight. The distance that prevents rescue also prevents proper medical care. Colonists must survive with whatever skills and supplies they bring. This reality affects who can go to Mars. Health checks will need to remove anyone who might need advanced medical treatment. The selection process will favor those who are already very healthy and genetically lucky. It will exclude anyone with a risk of the very conditions that spaceflight causes. And even then, some settlers will develop problems no test could predict. The first unexpected medical emergency on Mars will push human creativity to its limits in ways no simulation can match. Reproduction on Mars raises questions no one can yet answer. Can humans get pregnant in lower gravity? Can pregnancies grow normally with different gravity forces? Can children born on Mars ever live on Earth, or will they be biologically Martian from birth? These questions matter for any plan of permanent settlement. A colony that cannot have children is not a true colony. It is an outpost that will die with its first. Space station gives us our best current comparison for long-term space psychology. Astronauts spend 6 months there in conditions that are tight, but not as extreme as Mars missions will be. They can see Earth through their windows. They can talk with family with very little delay. They know that escape is possible within hours if a real emergency happens. And even then, the mental challenges are serious. Studies of ISS crews have shown mood decline over mission time, increased anger, conflicts between crew members, shifting negative feelings toward mission control staff, a behavior researchers call autonomization, where crew members become more independent from Earth support and less open about their inner feelings. All of this happens in an environment with regular supplies, regular crew changes, and regular contact with the outside world. Mars missions remove every support the ISS provides. No quick return, no real two-way conversation, no supplies beyond what is carried, no crew changes, no window showing Earth as a blue symbol of hope. Just the crew, just the habitat, just the endless red landscape of a planet that wants them dead. The Mars 500 experiment tried to copy these conditions on Earth. 6 volunteers spent 520 days in a closed habitat in Moscow. Researchers watched their mental states the whole time. The results were worrying. Crew members had serious sleep problems. One person spent most of his time in bed showing signs of depression. Relationships worsened. Communication with fake mission control dropped in both how often it happened and how emotional it was. And these volunteers knew they were on Earth. They knew that in a real emergency, help was just outside the door. They knew their isolation was chosen and temporary. Their knowledge that the experiment would end gave mental protection that real Mars colonists will not have. Real Mars colonists will know their isolation is forever. They will know no help is coming no matter what happens. They will know the small group in their habitat are the only humans they will ever meet face to face for the rest of their lives. This knowledge creates a mental weight that no Earth-based simulation can copy. Surveys of astronauts and cosmonauts have identified the factors they find most mentally challenging for a Mars mission. Isolation and boredom rank highest. Distance-related communication delays with Earth, leadership problems, differences in management styles between space agencies, cultural misunderstandings in international crews. Each factor adds to the others. Together, they form a pressure cooker environment where small problems can grow into mission-threatening crises. Communication delay deserves special focus. When an astronaut on the ISS has a hard day, they can video call their partner that night. They can hear a familiar voice right away. They can be reminded they are loved, that their sacrifice matters, that home is waiting. This connection gives mental stability. It keeps the astronaut's sense of identity as someone with relationships and a life beyond the mission. Mars colonists lose this stability. Their talks with loved ones become exchanges of recorded messages. Ask a question, wait 20 minutes or more for a reply. By the time the answer comes, the emotional moment is gone. The natural flow that makes conversation feel alive disappears. What remains is messaging, meaningful, but very different from real-time connection. Over months and years, this communication limit weakens relationships. Partners on Earth keep living their lives. They face problems the Mars colonist cannot help with. They feel joys the colonist cannot share in the moment. They grow and change while the colonist receives only delayed snapshots of who they are becoming. The colonist becomes a letter writer instead of a real part of the lives of those they love. Children grow up watching recorded messages from a parent on another planet. They cannot ask questions and get answers right away. They cannot show their parent what they made today and see their reaction. They cannot be comforted in real time when they are sad or scared. The parent becomes an idea, a face on a screen that talks about the past in ways that no longer feel important. How does a child stay close to someone who exists only as delayed video? The colonists themselves face questions about who they are. Who are you when you are cut off from everyone who knew you before? When the shared experiences that shaped your relationships no longer exist? When you cannot take part in the culture you grew up in? The self is partly built through social interaction. Remove most of that interaction, and the self becomes unstable. Colonists may struggle to remember who they are, to keep clear stories about their lives, to feel that their existence matters to anyone beyond the few people trapped with them. Grief becomes a constant presence. Every colonist will eventually learn that someone they loved has died on Earth, a parent, a sibling, a close friend. They will get this news hours after it happens. They cannot attend funerals, cannot comfort family, cannot take part in the rituals that help people deal with loss. They will grieve alone on an alien world while life on Earth goes on without them, and they will expect this grief. They will know loved ones are aging, that illnesses appear, that accidents happen. With every communication delay, they will wonder if the message waiting is the one they fear. This expected grief adds to the real grief when loss happens. The mental burden grows every year. Conflict inside the crew is another mental danger. On Earth, when relationships fail, people can leave. They can avoid difficult people. They can find new friends. Mars colonists have no such choices. If conflict forms between crew members, they must keep living and working together no matter what. There is no escape, no transfer, no door to shut between you and the person you cannot stand. Studies of Antarctic winter crews show how tension grows in isolation. Small annoyances turn into big problems. Personality differences that are manageable in normal life become unbearable when escape is impossible. Crews have faced serious conflicts, including events needing intervention, and Antarctic bases can evacuate people. Mars cannot. A Mars crew with serious conflict faces mission-threatening results. Cooperation is required to survive. Shared tasks must be done no matter how people feel. A crew member who refuses to work with another puts everyone at risk. The mental pressure to keep working relationships despite real dislike creates its own stress. People cannot simply express feelings. They must control them constantly for years with no break ahead. The commander of a Mars mission faces special leadership challenges. They must keep the crew united over years of confinement. They must make life-or-death choices without real-time help from Earth. They must manage their own mental health while supporting everyone else. They must balance mission goals with crew well-being when these conflict. And they must do all of this while feeling the same isolation and stress as their crew. History shows that leadership in extreme isolation often fails. Expeditions have rebelled. Crews have split into groups. Leaders have made choices that cost lives. The mental pressures of isolation can harm judgment in ways that seem clear later, but were invisible at the time. A Mars commander suffering mental decline from radiation exposure might not notice their own problems. They might make choices that seem logical to their damaged brain but look clearly wrong to an outside observer. The risk of mental illness cannot be ignored. Depression, anxiety, psychosis. These conditions appear in the general population at meaningful levels. Astronaut screening tries to remove people with higher risk, but no test is perfect, and Mars conditions might trigger mental illness in people who showed no earlier signs. What happens when a crew member develops clinical depression on Mars? The mission cannot remove their duties. Medicine supplies are limited. Mental health expertise may be very limited among the crew. The depressed person must keep working despite their condition or everyone suffers. This is not kind. This is not how mental illness is treated on Earth, but Mars has no other options. What happens when a crew member develops psychosis? When they lose touch with reality, believe things that are not true, or see threats that do not exist? Do other crew members have the right to restrain them, the training to handle them, the medicine to treat them? A psychotic person in a small, sealed habitat is a danger to everyone, and there is nowhere to send them for proper care. NASA's research on behavioral health risks in space exploration recognizes these issues. They have created screening rules, training, and countermeasures like peer support and conflict resolution. Earth-based tests help show what works, but simulations cannot copy the deep psychology of permanent exile. They cannot create the knowledge that return is impossible. They cannot produce the years of stress real missions will bring. Some researchers suggest Mars colonists may need to change psychologically. They may need to let go of their bond to Earth and accept a new Martian identity. This change might protect against the pain of permanent separation, but it raises questions about who these people become. Are they still the same people who left Earth, or have they become something new? And is that change healthy, or is it dissociation? A coping strategy that protects the mind by cutting ties that once defined the self. The idea of the overview effect explains how seeing Earth from space changes astronauts. Many report deep feelings of connection and unity. They return to Earth changed by what they saw, but that change assumes return. It assumes the astronaut will rejoin humanity with their new view. Mars colonists cannot return to share their change. Whatever understanding they gain from seeing Earth as a small, pale dot stays with them on their distant world. They cannot teach, What they learn cannot be shared right away with humanity's shared knowledge, except through delayed messages that lose their urgency. Their change becomes isolating instead of connecting. Another way their experience differs from anything humans have known before is the challenge of choosing psychologically suitable people for Mars colonization, which is still unsolved. What personality traits predict strength under conditions no human has ever faced? What life backgrounds prepare people for permanent exile? What reasons keep individuals going through years of confinement and separation? We can guess. We can make comparisons using polar expeditions, submarine missions, and space station stays. But the conditions of living on Mars are unlike anything before. The mental demands may be greater than what any human can handle for long. And if someone breaks, if the isolation, stress, and grief become overwhelming, there are no mental health centers on Mars, no chance for rest or retreat, no therapists to give face-to-face help. There are only recorded messages from Earth that arrive too late to help. Only crewmates who are also struggling. Only the walls of the habitat and the hostile world outside. A mind that breaks on Mars stays broken. There is no evacuation for a mental health crisis. There is no rescue for despair. There is only the endless struggle to survive in conditions the human mind was never designed to endure. In the next chapter, we will explore the Martian environment itself. The air that cannot be breathed, the dust that poisons, the cold that kills, the planet that actively resists human presence. A planet that wants you dead awaits. Stop. I have completed Chapter 5. Please confirm that I should continue with Chapters 6 through 10. Chapter 6, A Planet That Wants You Dead. Mars is beautiful in photographs, rust-colored deserts stretching to far horizons, ancient river valleys carved into the land. Olympus Mons rising 22 km above the surrounding plains, the largest volcano in the solar system. Valles Marineris cutting across the surface for 4,000 km, a canyon system that would stretch across the entire United States. These images inspire awe. They fuel dreams of exploration and settlement. They make Mars seem like a place humans could live. The photographs lie by leaving things out. They show the scenery but hide the environment. They capture what you see but not what you feel. Standing on the surface of Mars would be an experience of non-stop danger. Every breath you tried to take would kill you. Every unprotected moment would bring you closer to death. The planet does not just fail to support human life. It actively attacks it. Begin with the atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere presses down on us at sea level with a force of about 1,013 millibars. This pressure keeps water liquid at livable temperatures. It provides oxygen for breathing. It protects us from extreme temperatures. It blocks radiation. We evolved inside this atmospheric shell and cannot live without it. Mars has an atmosphere. It is not completely missing like the moon's, but the atmosphere that exists offers nothing humans need. Surface pressure averages about 6 millibars, less than 1% of Earth's pressure. At this pressure, water cannot stay liquid. It either freezes or turns directly into vapor. Your blood would boil at body temperature. Your lungs would tear trying to breathe. Being exposed to Mars's atmosphere without a pressure suit means death within seconds. The makeup of this thin atmosphere makes things worse. It is about 96% carbon dioxide, less than 3% nitrogen, with argon making up most of the rest. Oxygen exists only in tiny traces, about 0.13%. This cannot be breathed by any definition. It is a toxic gas mix that would poison you even if the pressure were high enough. Carbon dioxide in high amounts kills. Above 5%, people get headaches and confusion. Above 10%, people pass out within minutes. Above 20%, death comes quickly. Mars's atmosphere is almost pure carbon dioxide. Breathing it would fill your lungs with poison. Your body would desperately try to push it out, but there would be no oxygen to replace it. You would die gasping for air that does not exist. Temperature adds another deadly factor. Mars is farther from the sun than Earth. It gets about half the solar energy per square meter. Combined with the thin atmosphere that cannot hold heat, this creates temperatures that would kill an unprotected human within minutes. The average surface temperature on Mars is about -60 degrees C. At the poles, winter temperatures drop to -125 degrees C. Even at the equator on the warmest day, temperatures barely reach 0 degrees C. The cold is constant. The cold is unavoidable. The cold seeps through every structure and requires constant energy use to fight it. This cold mixes with low pressure to create conditions Earth experience cannot prepare anyone for. Water ice turns directly into vapor without becoming liquid. Frost forms in unfamiliar ways. Surviving requires constant attention to dangers that do not exist on Earth. Martian dust is another danger that early planners did not fully understand. Mars is covered in fine dust made from billions of years of meteor impacts and erosion. This dust gets everywhere. It covers solar panels. It slips into seals. It works its way into machines. Mars rovers have struggled with dust buildup during their missions. For humans, the dust brings even more danger. Martian dust contains perchlorates, chemical compounds toxic to humans. The Phoenix lander first found perchlorates in 2008. Later missions confirmed them across Mars at levels between 0.5 and 1%. Perchlorates disrupt thyroid function. They block iodine use. Long-term exposure causes hormone problems that affect growth and metabolism. The amounts found on Mars would be labeled hazardous waste on Earth. Any facility handling such levels would need strict safety rules. Mars colonists cannot avoid exposure. Dust will enter habitats on suits and tools. It will settle on surfaces people touch. It can contaminate water if filters fail. Every spacewalk brings dust inside. Every leaking seal adds more. Perchlorates cannot be seen or smelled. They build up until health problems appear. The danger goes beyond perchlorates. Martian dust reacts with water to form highly reactive chemicals similar to those created in quartz mining on Earth. Miners who breathe silica dust get silicosis, a lung disease that scars breathing tissue. Martian dust may cause similar damage through different chemistry. The tiny particles can reach deep into the lungs and damage cells directly. Studies warn that breathing Martian dust could cause cancer. The process is similar to how asbestos causes cancer. Long, thin particles get stuck in lung tissue and cause ongoing inflammation. Over time, this raises cancer risk. Colonists who survive everything else Mars throws at them could still die from lung cancer caused by dust they could not avoid breathing. Mars dust storms add sudden dangers on top of long-term ones. Mars has global dust storms that can cover the whole planet for months. They start locally and spread. Fine dust lifted by wind travels across hemispheres. The sky darkens. Sunlight reaching the surface drops sharply. For colonists who rely on solar power, a global dust storm could be deadly. Power generation could fall below what life support needs. Heating could fail. Oxygen production could stop. The storm could last months while colonists watch their batteries drain. There would be nowhere to go. No backup power to use. Only hope that the storm ends before the power runs out. The Opportunity rover was lost to a global dust storm in 2018. Dust blocked its solar panels. Communication stopped. The rover, which worked for 14 years, died because Mars buried it in dust. Human colonists would face the same danger on a much larger scale. Radiation on Mars was discussed earlier but must be mentioned again. The thin atmosphere blocks little radiation. Mars has no strong magnetic field to protect it. Cosmic rays and solar particles hit the surface at levels far higher than on Earth. The planet itself offers no shelter from this invisible attack. Gravity on Mars is about 38% of Earth's. This sounds manageable. It might even seem nice. Less stress on joints, easier movement, lifting heavy objects with less effort. But low gravity causes health problems explained earlier. It also creates challenges for equipment made on Earth. Liquids act differently at 0.38 G heat flow changes. Fire behaves differently. Chemical processes designed for Earth gravity may act unexpectedly. Every system built and tested on Earth must be tested again for Mars. Some will fail in surprising ways because gravity no longer matches design assumptions. Mars's day offers one small comfort. At 24 hours and 37 minutes, it is close to Earth's day. Sleep cycles should adjust more easily than on other worlds, but the match is not perfect. Over time, the extra 37 minutes adds up. Mars time slowly drifts from Earth time. Working with mission control becomes harder. Sleep schedules tied to Earth will slowly shift from local sunrise and sunset. Water exists on Mars, but not in easy-to-use form. Large ice deposits exist at the poles and underground. Frozen ground is common, but liquid water cannot last on the surface. Pressure is too low. Temperatures are too cold. Any water brought from Earth or collected on Mars must be carefully stored and managed. Getting water from Mars requires energy and equipment early colonies may not have. Mining ice means finding deposits, digging frozen ground, moving material, melting it, and cleaning it. Each step needs machines shipped from Earth or built locally. The water humans need exists on Mars, but reaching it is an engineering challenge never done at large scale. The land itself creates danger. Mars has no GPS system, no satellite network to give location help. Early colonists will lack tools modern explorers rely on. They will navigate by landmarks and estimates. The terrain hides dangers unseen from orbit. Loose soil that cannot hold weight, underground spaces that could collapse, sharp rocks hidden by dust, steep slopes that look gentle from space. Every trip outside the habitat carries risks that cannot be fully predicted. Communication delays with Earth were covered earlier, but Mars creates emergencies Earth has never faced. A suit seal breaking during a dust storm, a medical crisis during a solar radiation event, a vehicle failing kilometers from the habitat as night falls. These emergencies must be handled locally because Earth cannot help in time. The mental weight of this hostile environment adds to its physical dangers. Colonists will know death waits just outside their walls. They will know one equipment failure could expose them to conditions that kill in seconds. They will know the planet offers nothing they need and threatens everything they are. This knowledge creates constant stress that slowly wears down mental strength. Mars does not want humans dead in any thinking way. It is not evil. It simply exists as it has for billions of years, not caring about life that tries to live there. The danger is environmental, not intentional, but the effect is the same. Every need must be provided by machines. Air, water, heat, pressure, radiation protection, food, none exist naturally in usable form. Every need depends on technology working perfectly in an environment it was not made for. Every failure can be deadly in ways Earth never is. Living on Mars means living inside machines, never touching the planet, never breathing its air, never feeling its wind. The experience is unlike any life on Earth. Even Earth's harshest places offer breathable air, survivable seasons, and possible rescue. Mars offers none of this. Mars offers only the constant need to keep artificial life support working between people and instant death. The planet does not care if those systems work. It does not notice if colonists live or die. Mars simply remains Mars, a world that was always dead, a world that stays hostile to the life that dreams of living there. In the next chapter, we will explore why returning from Mars may be physically impossible, no matter the desire. The fuel needs that exceed current technology. The infrastructure that does not exist and may never exist. The fuel that does not exist awaits. Chapter 7. The fuel that does not exist. The rocket equation rules all space flight. It is harsh math that does not care about human dreams. The equation says that fuel needed to speed up a spacecraft grows exponentially with the speed change required. Double the speed chain, and fuel needs grow far more than double. For Mars missions, this creates a problem with no easy fix. Think about traveling from Earth to Mars. A spacecraft must escape Earth's gravity. It must cross space. It must slow down into Mars orbit. It must land on Mars. Each step needs fuel. Every kilogram of fuel needed later must be launched from Earth, which needs fuel to lift that fuel, which needs more fuel to lift that fuel. The math stacks up until the numbers become huge. The Apollo lunar module needed about 4,000 kg of fuel to land on the Moon and return to orbit. The Moon's gravity is about 1/6 of Earth's. Mars's gravity is about 1/3. This difference roughly doubles fuel needs for similar tasks, but this comparison hides the real challenge. The Moon is 3 days away. Mars is 6 to 9 months away. Moon missions could carry all fuel from Earth. Mars missions cannot. The fuel needed to carry return fuel from Mars is more than any rocket ever built can lift. The numbers explain it. Estimates say that each kilogram of useful payload on Mars needs 7 to 11 kilograms launched from Earth. For fuel, it is far worse. To have 1 kilogram of fuel on Mars carried from Earth would require launching about 226 kilograms from Earth. This makes carrying return fuel from Earth impossible. The Saturn V rocket could lift about 130,000 kg to low Earth orbit. It was the most powerful rocket until SpaceX's Starship. Even Saturn V could not support a Mars round trip with all fuel from Earth. Starship aims to lift about 150,000 kg to orbit. Even this does not change the math. The fuel needed for a Mars round trip from Earth is still too much. Mission planners knew this long ago. Their solution is called in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. Instead of bringing all fuel from Earth, fuel would be made on Mars. Mars's air has carbon dioxide, its soil and ice have water. These can be used to make methane and oxygen, the fuel Starship uses. The chemistry is simple. The Sabatier reaction turns carbon dioxide and hydrogen into methane and water. Electrolysis splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. Together, these can make rocket fuel. Each kilogram of hydrogen from Earth could help make about 20 kg of fuel on Mars. The MOXIE experiment on the Perseverance rover showed oxygen can be made from Mars's air. It made about 12 grams per hour and ran for over 2 years. This proved the idea works. But proving an idea is not the same as making it large-scale. MOXIE made grams. A Mars launch vehicle needs tens of thousands of kilograms. Scaling up needs huge equipment never built or tested on Mars. A Starship returning from Mars might need about 33 tons of fuel just to reach orbit, plus more to head back to Earth. Total fuel needs could reach 100 tons or more. Making that much fuel on Mars needs massive systems. Power plants running non-stop, ice mining equipment, processing factories, storage tanks that keep fuel cold for years. None of this exists on Mars today. Time makes it harder. Fuel production cannot start until equipment arrives and is set up. This takes time. Studies suggest 1 to 2 years of production are needed before enough fuel is ready. During this time, fuel must stay liquid. Methane boils at -161 degrees C. Oxygen boils at -183 degrees C. Stopping fuel from boiling away for years needs insulation and cooling systems that add weight and complexity. No one has proven zero boil-off storage for years in real conditions. It works in labs, but not yet on another planet. Another system that must work perfectly or the return fails. Valves and seals add more risk. NASA engineers say no valve leaks 0%. Over months and years, tiny leaks add up. Fuel that leaks away cannot send anyone home. If leakage exceeds production capacity, the fuel tanks will never fill no matter how long colonists wait. Water extraction adds another layer of complexity. The Sabatier reaction requires hydrogen. Hydrogen can be extracted from Martian water ice. But first, the water ice must be located. And mind, Mars has significant water ice deposits, but they are not evenly spread out. Some regions offer easy access to ice. Others would require deep drilling or long-distance transportation. Early Mars missions may not land near accessible water ice. Site selection must balance many factors. Latitude affects solar power availability and communication geometry. Terrain affects landing safety and surface operations. Geological interest drives scientific value. Water ice availability is important, but not the only consideration. A site chosen for other reasons might lack the water resources needed for propellant production. Even at sites with confirmed water ice, the extraction process is not simple. Permafrost must be dug up. Ice must be separated from regolith. The material must be moved to processing facilities. Each step requires equipment that must work reliably in Martian conditions. Equipment failure at any point in the chain breaks the entire system. The power requirements for fuel production are very large. Electrolysis requires electrical energy. The Sabatier reaction requires heat. Cryogenic storage requires cooling. Mining and transport require mechanical power. Current estimates suggest that producing propellant at rates high enough for return missions would require hundreds of kilowatts of continuous power. Solar power on Mars works at lower efficiency than on Earth. The greater distance from the Sun means roughly 43% of the solar energy. Dust buildup on panels further reduces output. Global dust storms can cut power generation to nearly zero for months. A propellant production system that depends only on solar power would be vulnerable to long outages. Nuclear power offers another option, but brings its own challenges. Fission reactors provide reliable, continuous output regardless of weather or dust. NASA's Kilopower project has developed small reactors suitable for Mars use. But nuclear systems are heavy. They require shielding. They produce heat that must be controlled, and public acceptance of launching nuclear materials from Earth remains politically difficult. SpaceX's mission architecture assumes this approach for return propellant. Elon Musk has stated many times that starships would refuel on Mars using locally produced methane and oxygen. The entire economic case for Mars colonization depends on this assumption. Without ISRU, the numbers do not work. With ISRU, the numbers might work if every assumption proves correct. The scientific community has expressed doubt about near-term ISRU capabilities. A 2024 analysis of SpaceX's Mars mission scenario concluded that reliance on ISRU technology requires extremely high reliability to avoid stranding crews on Mars. The paper noted that setting up ISRU infrastructure exceeds anything ever transported beyond low Earth orbit. The gap between concept and real operation remains huge. NASA's now canceled Mars sample return mission showed how hard it is to launch anything from the Martian surface. The Mars ascent vehicle designed for that mission would have launched a small sample container weighing a few kilograms. Not humans, not supplies, just a container of rocks. The engineering challenges of that small vehicle cost billions of dollars and years of development before budget pressure ended the program. Scaling from a sample container to a crewed return vehicle represents an exponential increase in difficulty. The mass is many orders of magnitude greater. The reliability requirements are absolute. Human lives depend on every system working correctly after years of exposure to Martian conditions. There is no margin for partial success. The abort options that protected Apollo missions do not exist for Mars return attempts. If the ascent vehicle fails during launch, the crew has no backup option. If the rendezvous with the return vehicle fails, the crew cannot simply go back down to the surface. Every phase of the return journey is all or nothing, success or death. No middle outcomes. This single point of failure runs through the entire return architecture. The ISRU system must work. The propellant storage must hold. The ascent vehicle must function after years of waiting. The orbital rendezvous must succeed. The trans-Earth injection must work correctly. The Earth entry system must protect against re-entry heating. Any failure along this chain ends the mission and the lives of everyone aboard. The probability of success across all these linked systems may be lower than optimistic presentations suggest. Each system might have 90% reliability. Multiply enough 90% chances together, and the overall chance of complete success drops sharply. This is not pessimism. This is basic probability applied to complex, step-by-step operations. Current technology cannot provide the fuel for Mars return with acceptable confidence. Future technology might solve these problems. ISRU might grow into a reliable capability. Propellant storage might achieve zero boil-off. Every engineering challenge might be solved with enough investment and effort. But these are hopes for the future. They are not present abilities. Anyone who goes to Mars in the next decade goes without a proven return capability. They go trusting that technology will improve during their mission. They go accepting the chance that the fuel to bring them home may never appear. They go as settlers who may become permanent residents no matter what they originally planned. The fuel that does not exist is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of current capability. The propellant needed for Mars return must be made on another planet using processes never proven at full scale. Until that production succeeds, the return journey remains theoretical, and theories do not fly spacecraft. In the next chapter, we will explore the other technologies that do not yet exist, but must work perfectly for Mars colonization to succeed. Life support systems, landing capabilities, habitation infrastructure, the gap between what we have and what we need. The technology we do not have waits. Chapter 8. The technology we do not have. The greatest engineering achievements in spaceflight history delivered 12 humans to the surface of the Moon and returned them safely just 3 days from Earth in spacecraft that worked for about 2 weeks with real-time communication to mission control and abort options available through most of the mission. And it required the focused effort of over 400,000 people and 4% of the entire federal budget to achieve. Mars colonization requires capabilities that exceed Apollo by many times. Spacecraft that work reliably for years. Life support systems that recycle resources forever. Landing vehicles that deliver payloads 100 times heavier than anything ever landed on Mars. Habitats that protect humans from radiation and pressure and extreme temperatures for decades. Technologies that in many cases exist only as ideas or early prototypes. Begin with entry, descent, and landing. NASA calls this the 7 minutes of terror for Mars missions. The thin Martian atmosphere creates a problem with no easy answer. It is thick enough to cause dangerous heating during entry, but too thin to slow heavy payloads enough. Spacecraft reach Mars traveling thousands of meters per second. They must slow to landing speed using whatever mix of air drag and engine power their design allows. The largest payload ever landed on Mars is the Perseverance rover. About 1 metric ton, the landing system used a heat shield for early slowing, a supersonic parachute to slow more, and a sky crane that lowered the rover on cables while hovering on rocket thrust. This complex sequence worked perfectly, but it has reached its practical limits. Human missions need to land payloads between 50 and 100 metric tons, 50 to 100 times heavier than Perseverance. The physics of parachute slowing does not scale evenly. A parachute large enough to slow that mass would be impossibly huge. The sky crane method cannot be scaled to these weights. A completely new landing system is needed. SpaceX proposes supersonic retropropulsion, using rocket engines to slow down while still moving faster than sound through the Martian atmosphere. This method has been shown on Earth during Falcon 9 booster landings, but Earth's atmosphere is 100 times denser than Mars. The airflow behavior is very different. No one has ever performed supersonic retropropulsion in conditions truly like Mars. When rocket exhaust meets incoming supersonic airflow, the physics becomes very complex. Shock waves form and change unpredictably. Pressure changes can destabilize the vehicle. These effects are hard to model with computers. Wind tunnel tests give limited answers because no facility can perfectly copy Mars' atmospheric conditions. The first true test will be an actual Mars landing. NASA engineers have shared concerns about this plan. The chief engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory noted that firing engines backward while moving through an atmosphere creates shock waves that could hit the vehicle and possibly destroy it. This was named one of the hardest problems to model. There was almost no experience with firing engines into incoming high-speed airflow before SpaceX began landing Falcon boosters. SpaceX's Earth landings have produced data that improves confidence. There is a phase of Falcon 9 reentry where engines fire backward at supersonic speeds through thin atmosphere similar to Mars. NASA has studied this data, but Falcon boosters are much smaller than Starship. The behavior may not scale in a simple way, and Mars' atmosphere differs from Earth's in makeup and behavior. The Starship landing design uses the vehicle's own engines for final slowing and landing. This means engines that have been inactive for months during travel must start perfectly on command. No test firing is possible in the Martian atmosphere before landing. The engines either work or they do not. The vehicle lands or it crashes. Heat shield technology adds more challenges. Mars entry causes extreme heating. The vehicle must lose orbital speed while protecting its contents from temperatures that would destroy unprotected structures. SpaceX has tested many heat shield tile materials on Starship flights. Tiles have fallen off. Damage has occurred. The solution is still being developed. Mars entry adds challenges beyond Earth reentry. The carbon dioxide atmosphere ionizes differently than Earth's nitrogen-oxygen mix. This ionization creates more free oxygen, which can attack heat shield materials. SpaceX admitted this in their 2024 presentations, noting that Starship tiles must survive stronger chemical attack during Mars entry than Earth entry. Life support systems for Mars missions must operate much longer than any previous spacecraft. The International Space Station uses what engineers call an open-loop system. Supplies are used up and waste is thrown away. Regular resupply missions bring new materials. This approach cannot work for Mars, where resupply takes at least 18 months and costs billions of dollars per delivery. Mars colonies need closed-loop life support systems that recycle water from moisture and waste, create oxygen from carbon dioxide, and turn human waste back into useful resources. Such systems exist only as prototypes. Tests on the ISS have tried parts of them, but no fully closed-loop system has ever supported humans for the many years Mars missions require. The Biosphere 2 experiment in the early 1990s tried to build a sealed ecosystem on Earth. The results were serious and concerning. Oxygen levels fell unexpectedly. Carbon dioxide built up. The system failed to stay balanced. Participants faced conflict and hardship. The experiment showed how hard closed ecosystems are to manage even with Earth's gravity and the option to fix problems from outside. Mars life support must work better than Biosphere 2 while running in lower gravity with no outside help. Every part must be repairable using materials found locally or brought from Earth. Every supply must be planned for years of use. Every failure must have a backup or the colonists die. Food production on Mars is still mostly theoretical. Experiments have grown plants under Mars-like conditions. The movie The Martian showed potatoes grown in Martian soil. But real Martian regolith is toxic because of perchlorates. It lacks the organic matter and microbes that make Earth soil fertile. Turning Martian soil into good growing material requires processing that has never been proven. Hydroponic systems provide another option that avoids soil problems. Plants grow in nutrient water under artificial light. LED technology has made indoor farming more efficient. But hydroponic systems need equipment, nutrients, water, and electricity. Every input must be supplied or made locally. Any break in supply threatens the food production that colonists need to stay alive. The calorie needs of a Mars colony are very large. Each person needs about 2,000 calories per day. A crew of 12 needs 24,000 calories each day, 87 million calories each year. Producing this much food reliably and in here is the rewritten version in simple, clear English, keeping the same tone, style, sequence, and length, line by line. No information has been added or removed. Grammar and spelling errors are corrected. An alien environment with limited equipment creates an agricultural challenge unlike anything before. Medical technology for Mars must handle any problem that may happen without the option to evacuate. Right now, astronauts with serious medical issues can return to Earth within hours. Sawyer's capsules stay ready for emergency re-entry. Commercial crew vehicles offer other evacuation paths. Mars has no such options. A medical emergency on Mars must be treated there or the patient dies. The range of possible medical problems is huge. Injuries from accidents, appendicitis needing surgery, heart attacks, strokes, cancer caused by radiation exposure, psychiatric emergencies. Each needs different skills and equipment. No Mars crew can include experts for every possible condition. Training must be wide instead of deep. Telemedicine with 20-minute delays offers limited help. Surgical ability on Mars creates special challenges. Operating in low gravity with limited tools and no blood bank or imaging equipment. The surgeon may be another crew member with weeks of training instead of years of residency. The patient may be someone critical to mission success whose injury puts everyone at risk. The mental pressure of performing surgery knowing that failure means death for a teammate and possibly for the colony adds another level of difficulty. Dental emergencies seem small compared to surgery, but create real problems. An untreated tooth abscess can turn into a full-body infection. Pulling a tooth without proper tools and anesthesia is traumatic. Root canals are beyond amateur skill. The medical kit must include dental supplies, and at least one crew member must have dental training. Another skill competing for limited training time and mission weight. Habitat structures for Mars must survive conditions no Earth building faces. Pressure difference between inside and outside. Extreme temperatures, radiation exposure, dust intrusion, micrometeorite strikes, years of use without major repairs. The structures must be light enough to launch from Earth, yet strong enough to protect people forever. Current ideas include inflatable habitats that expand after landing, rigid structures built from parts, underground facilities dug into hills or lava tubes, 3D printed structures made from Martian regolith. Each method has strengths and weaknesses. None has been proven on Mars. The first settlers will be test subjects for whatever habitat design they get. Power systems were discussed in the fuel chapter, but deserve focus as a shared technology challenge. Everything on Mars needs power. Life support, temperature control, food production, communication, ISRU, transport. The power needs of a working colony exceed anything ever placed beyond Earth orbit. Solar panels large enough for a colony would cover huge areas. They would be vulnerable to dust buildup and storm damage. They would produce nothing during dust storms that can last for months. Nuclear systems avoid these problems, but add weight, complexity, and legal challenges. Hybrid systems require both approaches to work together correctly. The total technology gap between today's abilities and Mars colonization needs is enormous. Not one problem, but many. Each must be solved well enough that failure risk stays acceptable. Each solution must work with every other solution. The system of systems must operate for years without the maintenance support that keeps Earth technology working. This is why timelines keep slipping. Not because engineers lack skill, not because money is missing, but because the problems are truly hard. Because each solution reveals new problems. Because full-scale testing needs facilities that do not exist. because Mars itself cannot be used as a test site without risking human lives. SpaceX approaches these challenges through rapid iteration. Build fast, test hard, learn from failure, accept losses that traditional aerospace programs would never allow. This mindset has produced strong results with Falcon rockets and Dragon spacecraft. Whether it can deliver Mars-ready systems in the timeframes Elon Musk predicts is still unknown. The technology we lack is not a fixed list. Progress happens constantly. Abilities that once seemed impossible now exist. But progress takes time, and time means years before Mars missions can launch safely. Years that colonization supporters want to shorten through ambition and investment. Years that physics and engineering complexity refuse to remove no matter the desire. Anyone who goes to Mars soon will go with technology that is good enough, not proven. They accept risk levels that would be rejected anywhere else. They trust that problems will be solved as they happen instead of before launch. They become test pilots for a civilization's worth of untested systems. Some argue this is the nature of exploration, that every frontier needed people willing to accept uncertainty, that waiting for perfect technology means waiting forever. There is truth in this, but there is also truth in recognizing that Mars brings challenges very different from past frontiers, and that failure costs more than personal tragedy. It could mean ending human Mars efforts for generations. In the next chapter, we meet the people who said yes anyway. The volunteers who applied for one-way trips knowing the risks. The people who valued the dream of Mars more than their own survival. The volunteers who said yes wait. Chapter 9, the volunteers who said yes. In 2012, a Dutch entrepreneur named Bas Lansdorp announced a bold plan. He would send humans to Mars within 10 years, not as a government program but as a private project. Not with traditional astronauts, but with volunteers from the public. And here was the detail that shocked the world. The volunteers would not return. Mars One, as the organization was called, removed the return trip from its mission plan. Lansdorp and his team accepted what we have explored throughout this documentary. The technology and resources needed for return did not exist and would not soon exist. Instead of pretending otherwise, they designed a one-way mission. Settlers would go to Mars and live there forever. They would build the first human colony on another planet. They would die there. The response went beyond expectations. Over 200,000 people applied to become Mars One settlers from every continent, every age group, every walk of life. Teachers and engineers, artists and scientists, doctors and truck drivers, the young and the old, people with families and people alone, all volunteering to leave Earth forever for the chance to stand on Martian soil. The applicants understood what they were agreeing to. The information was clear. No return trip would be provided. Communication delays would last minutes. The environment would be deadly. The risks would be extreme. Life expectancy would likely be shorter than on Earth. And still they applied. 200,000 people who looked at those terms and said yes. What makes someone volunteer for permanent exile? The applicants shared many reasons in interviews and essays. Some mentioned science, the chance to add to human knowledge in a way no one else could. Some mentioned adventure, the pull of the frontier that has driven explorers throughout history. Some mentioned escape, situations on Earth they wanted to leave behind. And some mentioned something harder to explain, a sense that this was their purpose, that their whole life led to this choice. Aaron Hom was 29 when he applied, a hotel manager from the American Midwest. He said going to Mars was something he had wanted his entire life. When he learned about Mars One, he could not ignore the chance, even knowing the risks, even knowing he would never return to Earth. The opportunity mattered more than anything else. Layla Zucker was 45, a married emergency room doctor. She had a husband who supported her ambition. She said she would accept a 50% chance of surviving 2 years or a 1% chance of surviving 20. None of us plans to die, she said, but we all know we could. This view of death was clear, not hopeless, but honest. When asked what odds would make the trip worthwhile, panel members gave answers that would shock risk experts. Some said they would go even if survival chances were 99 to 1 against. Just let me step onto Mars. One applicant said he would spend whatever time he had building systems to improve his chances. The place mattered more than the length of time. These were not people with nothing to lose. Many had jobs, relationships, and stable lives. They were not seeking death. Psychological tests tried to remove those whose mental health could risk the mission. The applicants who advanced showed strength and stability along with a willingness to accept huge risk. The Mars One process eventually chose 100 finalists. These people received media attention. They gave interviews. They became known as those willing to take a one-way trip to Mars. But calling them crazy is unfair. They were people who made choices different from common values. They compared life on Earth with becoming a Martian and chose Mars. The finalists went through more training and testing. Medical exams, psychological tests, technical lessons, team exercises to judge how well they worked with others. The process was similar to astronaut selection in some ways and different in others. Traditional astronauts compete for temporary spaceflight with guaranteed return. Mars One candidates competed for permanent exile. The psychology of the volunteers showed clear patterns. Many scored high in openness, the trait linked to curiosity and love of new experiences. Many showed comfort with uncertainty, the ability to function without clear outcomes. Many showed what psychologists call self-transcendence, the habit of finding meaning beyond personal benefit. These traits describe people driven by exploration and discovery, people who find meaning in pushing limits rather than protecting comfort, people who see the unknown as opportunity, not danger. Such people have always existed at the edges of society. They crossed oceans, climbed mountains, entered lands others avoided. Critics questioned whether anyone truly understood the choice. How could someone fully understand permanent separation from everything familiar? The mental impact of Mars cannot be recreated. Even the best simulations fail to capture knowing that return is impossible. Maybe the volunteers could not fully imagine what they accepted. Maybe their excitement came from lack of imagination, not true acceptance. This criticism has truth but also limits. Humans often make choices whose outcomes they cannot fully predict. Marriage, children, careers, immigration. Every big life choice involves unknown results. Mars volunteers may have understood the general idea while lacking details. This is normal human behavior placed in an extreme situation. Mars One eventually collapsed. The group declared bankruptcy in 2019 without launching a mission. Money issues, technical problems, critics who doubted the timeline. The dream was bigger than the resources available. The 100 finalists returned to normal life. The 200,000 applicants moved on, but the response revealed something important. When offered the chance to become Martians, hundreds of thousands volunteered. Not all were qualified, not all would have finished training, but the desire was real, something in human nature. Responds to another world, even if it means leaving everything behind. SpaceX draws similar excitement, but with a different message. Elon Musk says Starship missions will be round trips with the option to return. But careful observers notice the conditions. Return depends on ISRU, ascent vehicles, orbital docking, technologies not yet proven. The promise of return may be as uncertain as Mars One's honesty about its absence. The first Starship crews will accept risks similar to Mars One volunteers. Return may exist in plans but not in reality. They will trust technology to improve during the mission. They will accept that return may become impossible. In practice, they may also be taking one-way journeys. How should we view people who accept these terms? One view focuses on freedom. Adults can choose their own risks. If someone understands danger and accepts it, that choice deserves respect. We do not stop climbers from dangerous peaks. We do not ban extreme sports. Why should Mars be different? Another view focuses on responsibility. Volunteers are not alone. Families will suffer loss or absence. Society invested in their education and growth. Their deaths would affect public support for space exploration. The choice is not purely personal. A third view focuses on meaning. The volunteers may be answering something real. Humans have never stayed in one place. We explore, expand, move beyond comfort. Mars volunteers represent this drive at its extreme. They continue a path begun when humans left Africa. All three views may be true. Volunteers act freely, affect others, and serve something larger than themselves. A project that may decide whether humanity becomes a multi-planet species or stays on one world. The Mars One volunteers wanted to see the first Martian sunrise, to walk where no human had walked, to give their lives meaning beyond routine existence. They traded long lives on Earth for shorter lives on Mars. To them, the trade made sense. This desire continues today. The SpaceX community includes people ready to board Starship tomorrow. They follow every test, every update, dreaming of Mars. Some will go, others will watch from Earth. Volunteers matter because people are required to settle Mars. Technology alone cannot do it. Money alone cannot do it. Someone must board the ship. Someone must survive the journey. Someone must step onto Mars and start building for those who follow. Without volunteers, engineering does not matter. Volunteers also force us to ask what we value. Is survival the highest goal? Or are some purposes worth the cost of shorter lives? Is comfort the measure of a life well lived? Or does meaning come from taking part in goals that go beyond one single life? The volunteers answer these questions in a different way than most people. Their answers may be wrong, but their answers also show something real about what humans can choose to do. In the next and final chapter, we will step back and think about what all of this means. The cost of becoming Martian, the change that living there forever would require, and the question of whether that cost is worth paying. The cost of becoming Martian waits for us. Chapter 10, The Cost of Becoming Martian. We have traveled a long way in this investigation. Through the physics of distance and the biology of the body breaking down, through radiation and psychology and dangerous environments, through fuel needs that go beyond what we can do today and technology that is still untested, through the minds of volunteers who said yes even though they understood what yes meant. Now we reach the final question. Is it worth it? The cost of becoming Martian is not measured in dollars or euros or any kind of money. The cost is paid in years of life shortened by radiation exposure, in relationships broken by distance that cannot be crossed, in physical ability reduced by lower gravity, in mental health weakened by isolation, in the certain knowledge that every sunrise will be red and every horizon will feel strained, and every breath will depend on technology working perfectly in a place that gives no second chances for failure. This cost cannot be avoided with better engineering or more money. Some costs can be lowered. Radiation shielding may improve. Mental health support may become better. ISRU may someday provide a reliable way to return. But the basic change remains. Anyone who goes to Mars becomes something different from who they were on Earth. Their body changes. Their mind adjusts. Their identity shifts from Earth human to Martian. They become permanent residents of a world that was never meant for humans to live on. The children born on Mars, if colonization goes that far, will be Martians in an even deeper way. They will never have known Earth's gravity. Their bones and muscles will grow for Martian conditions. They may not be physically able to visit the planet of their ancestors. The first generation born on Mars might mark a split in human evolution, a branch of our species shaped for a new world and growing more different from those who stayed behind. Is this split good or bad? The question does not have an easy answer. Species have split many times throughout evolution. Groups separated by distance slowly grow different over generations. This is how biodiversity forms. Perhaps humans splitting into Earth humans and Mars humans is a natural step in our evolution. Perhaps it is something new that we do not yet have the wisdom to judge. Some people argue that becoming multiplanetary protects humanity from total destruction. If Earth suffers an asteroid strike or nuclear war or a pandemic that wipes out all life here, the Mars colony would keep humanity alive. This insurance idea has driven Elon Musk and others who push for fast colonization. Better to have humans on 2 planets than risk losing everything on one. The insurance idea has strength. Extinction is final in a way that individual death is not. If humanity ends, no future generations will ever exist. No children will be born. No discoveries will be made. No love will be felt. The loss is not just of people alive now, but of all possible people who could exist in the future. Against such complete loss, almost any cost can seem worth paying. But the insurance idea also has limits. Mars colonies, for a long time, would still depend on Earth for technology and supplies and knowledge. A disaster that destroyed Earth would likely destroy Mars settlements too. True independence would require industry that takes many generations to build. The insurance only works if Mars becomes self-sufficient before Earth faces a major crisis. Others argue that colonizing Mars is human destiny, that our species is meant to spread beyond our home world, that staying only on Earth would waste our potential, that the desire to explore and expand is part of who we are. This idea speaks to something deep in the human mind, the feeling that we are meant for more than what we experience now, that there are horizons meant to be crossed. The destiny argument is harder to judge than the insurance argument. What does it mean for something to be human destiny? How would we know if we were following or betraying that destiny? These are philosophical questions. These are questions that science cannot answer. They require beliefs about purpose and meaning that exist beyond testing and proof. Critics of Mars colonization offer other arguments worth thinking about. Perhaps the money and effort spent on Mars would help humanity more if used on Earth's problems. Climate change, poverty, disease, war. The problems facing billions of people on our home planet may deserve more attention than the dreams of a few thousand who want to leave. Every $1 billion spent on Starship is $1 billion not spent on clean energy or medical research or helping people in need. This resource argument assumes that human ability is limited and must be divided between choices. But history suggests that frontier projects can increase ability instead of just using it up. Technologies made for space have helped many industries on Earth. The inspiration from bold projects has pushed generations of scientists and engineers forward. Mars colonization may grow the total resources instead of just taking a bigger share. There is also the argument about human fulfillment. Perhaps some people can only reach their full potential through extreme challenges. Perhaps the volunteers for Mars missions are a type of person who would otherwise never feel complete. Perhaps the meaning they want cannot be found anywhere on Earth. If this is true, then stopping Mars colonization would force them into lives with less purpose. The cost they pay may be worth the meaning they gain. The cost of becoming Martian finally depends on what we believe makes life valuable. If living a long life is the most important thing, then Mars colonization seems unwise. Colonists will likely die younger than they would on Earth. If comfort and safety are the most important things, then Mars colonization seems cruel. The environment is dangerous. The risks are extreme. Suffering is certain. But if meaning, contribution, and being part of something bigger than yourself matter most, the calculation changes. The colonists will experience things no human ever has. They will help with a project that could shape the future of our species. They will take part in leaving Earth, a dream held for generations. The meaning may be worth the pain. The contribution may justify the cost. Each possible colonist must decide this for themselves. No outside authority can tell them if their values are right. No study can prove that Mars colonization is clearly good or clearly foolish. The choice is deeply personal, even though its effects reach the entire species. What we can say for sure is that the choice should be informed. Anyone thinking about going to Mars deserves to know the realities we have discussed. The radiation and its health effects, the physical decline and the chance that it cannot be reversed, the mental challenges and their known impacts, the technology risks that can mean life or death, the communication delays and how they strain relationships. Informed consent needs full knowledge. The dreams sold by space companies and fan communities sometimes hide the nightmares that come with them. Anyone who steps onto a spacecraft for Mars should do so with open eyes, knowing what they give up, knowing what they gain, knowing that this choice cannot be undone like most others in life. The question of whether humanity should colonize Mars is different from the question of whether individuals should volunteer to go. These questions have different answers for different people. Society might reasonably decide that Mars colonization helps humanity as a whole, even if most people would never choose it. Individuals might reasonably volunteer, even if society never forces or pays for their decision. We are at a moment when these questions move from ideas to reality. SpaceX builds starships. Launch windows get closer. Technical goals are reached one by one. The day when humans truly board a spacecraft for Mars is no longer far away. It is within planning timelines, within careers, within the lifetimes of people alive today. The first humans on Mars will not be symbols in a distant future. They will be real people with families, histories, hopes, and fears. They will step onto their spacecraft knowing most of what we have discussed here. They will launch anyway. They will survive the journey. They will land on red soil. And they will look up at a small blue dot in the Martian sky and know they are farther from home than any human ever has been. Some will succeed. They will find meaning and purpose and maybe even happiness in their new lives. They will build the systems future settlers need. They will do science that grows human knowledge. They will live lives that future generations remember as pioneers and founders. Some will struggle. They will miss Earth more than they expected. They will suffer from the physical and mental burdens we have described. They will regret choices that cannot be undone. They will survive instead of thrive. They will count the years left instead of celebrating each day. And some will die from accidents or sickness or radiation or equipment failure or mental collapse. discussed makes colonization impossible. Everything we have discussed makes colonization hard, expensive, and life-changing in ways we cannot fully predict. The choice to go is not ours to make for others. The volunteers will volunteer. The settlers will settle. The first Martians will become Martians. Whether those of us on Earth agree or not, our role is to understand, to support informed choice, to provide whatever tools and help we can, and to remember that those who leave are still human even as they become something humanity has never been before. Mars will not give its settlers back. Physics does not allow it. Biology makes it harder. Technology is not enough. Anyone who goes will never return to the world that shaped them. They will live and die as Martians, as exiles, as pioneers, as the first members of a new branch of human civilization under a strange sky. Whether this is tragedy or victory depends on values that reasonable people judge differently. Whether the cost is worth paying depends on what each person values most. Whether humanity should become multiplanetary depends on beliefs about purpose and destiny that go beyond science. What remains certain is this: the journey is real, the dangers are real, the change is real, and the volunteers will board their spacecraft and launch into the dark, carrying all of human hope and all of human weakness with them. May they find what they are looking for. May they build what they imagine. May their sacrifice, if it is a sacrifice, mean something to the species that sent them. And may we on Earth never forget the cost they paid to give humanity a future among the stars. The investigation is finished. The question has been answered. Anyone who goes to Mars will never return, not because they do not want to come back, not because we do not want to bring them home, but because the universe sets costs that desire and effort cannot defeat. The first Martians will be permanent Martians. This is the truth waiting for anyone who chooses to go. If you found this investigation useful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support makes these deep explorations possible. Tell me in the comments what you think about Mars colonization. Would you volunteer? Should humanity chase this dream? And what topic should we explore next? These are not just questions about space. They are questions about what it means to be human, what we value, what we are willing to give up, what futures we choose. The answers matter beyond any